bill introductions. Do we have any requests? Representative Hoheisel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have 24 RS 3079. This is on behalf of AMC Theaters, and it's providing for a full transferability of tax credits for investments in certain qualified business facilities.
Thank you. Committee, any questions? Any objections? Seeing none, the request is approved. Any further requests for bill introductions? Seeing none, we will move on to our first item of business for the day, and that is a hearing on House Bill 2610. We will open that hearing, and I'll turn first to Amelia with the Revisor's Office for an overview.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. House Bill number 2610 would provide a Kansas income tax subtraction modification applicable to tax years 2021 and thereafter for amounts received by a taxpayer who resides within 10 miles of property used as a farm or ranch, and ownership of the property was transferred pursuant to an appraiser's award or final judgment, and the property was taken by either the Kansas Department of Transportation or a public utility pursuant to eminent domain, if such amount was included in federal adjusted gross income of the taxpayer. The section would also apply if the sale of the property to either the Kansas Department of Transportation or a public utility, if such amounts are included in federal adjusted gross income of the taxpayer, and the sale would otherwise have been subject to a taking. And pursuant to KSA 26501, a taking is defined as the use by any authorized entity of the power of eminent domain to acquire any interest in private real property. And the bill would take effect from and after publication in the statute book, and I would be happy to stand for questions.
Thank you. I should have welcomed you to House Tax Committee.
Thank you.
Committee, any questions for Amelia? Seeing none, thank you for that overview. Committee, the fiscal note is kind of unknown. Does anyone have, there's not really a presentation or anything to do on the fiscal note unless somebody has questions. If not, we will move right along and open up the proponent section testimony for House Bill 2610 and welcome first to committee, Larry Rohr. Welcome to committee, sir. I don't think the mic's on. There should be a little red light.
Oh, there we go. I want to thank Adam Smith, the chairman of the committee, and all the committee members for listening to me today, giving me this opportunity to talk about Bill 2610. I'm going to do this a little different this year. Are there any veterans on the committee? Any Vietnam veterans on the committee? All right. You can kind of understand where I might be going here. I'm a Vietnam veteran. I've served my country proudly in Vietnam. Have slept in the hole for 3 months, 3 or 4 miles from DMZ, surrounded by 3 other guys on army cots with mosquito netting all the way around. So mosquitoes won't eat you alive. You try not to move while sleeping because if you do, then you get to the edge, they will get you. Not much margin for error. These cots aren't queen size. But in the Army's defense, they gave us marijuana pills. So the great side effect is you get to go like a goose. But you go outside anyhow. Did I mention all the time we were out there with no electricity, no modern anything? You had air when the wind blew. Then every week you get to go take a bath, wash your clothes in the same river that you get your drinking water from, which they put more malaria pills in, so you get to go like a goose some more. I hope I don't have to explain what that's like. All night, you get to pull guard for 2 hours, a person to play with your friends, some more, you guess it, mosquitoes. I really don't like talking about this at times, but it still bothers me a lot of nights. But it's good to talk about it once in a while. So people won't forget what some of us went through for our country. I could go on, but would think you would have the point by now. I fought for the great USA to stop communism. Then I came home in one piece, thank God. I lost some up here, I think, but I didn't have much anyhow. So got married, bought a farm, lived happily ever after until Mr. Brownback gave the company named Grain Belt Express Transmission Line Project the right to eminent domain us. Eminent domain is not all bad. We got to have it. We have no roads, no electricity, no sewers, no nothing. The bad part comes in when they got the power to take your land from you. The state of Kansas makes you sell it to them. You can't get out of it. You're going to sell it to them. You might be able to barter some and get the price up, but you're going to sell it to them one way or the other. They're going to sue you. And the real kicker is, then the state of Kansas taxes you for the money you get from the land that they made you sell. I just don't think that's right. I sweat a lot for this great country to stop communism. We don't have cell phones, computers, or anything when we was over there. I never got to talk to nobody, no friends, no family, no nothing, until I got back home. I still feel this is the best country in the world. I hope I was part of the reason for that. But this seems like this is the edge of communism to me. Force you to sell your land and get taxed for it. It's unreal that this is happening in the United States of America. We have been playing with this for a year and a half. Let's pass this bill and move on. God did it in 7 days. I would love to try to answer any questions that anybody has.
Committee, do we have any questions for this conferee? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you for listening. I appreciate that.
Our next conferee would be John Keenhoff. Welcome to committee.
Thank you, Chairman Smith and committee members. Appreciate the time you've given us to hear on this matter of eminent domain. Larry kind of touched on the main part of it, really, so there isn't a whole lot more to say. But when it comes to eminent domain, your land is pretty well confiscated, I guess. You don't have a say on what you want to get, what you want to let them have, or where you want them to. Or if you don't get a choice of where you want them to go with it, or anything, it's pretty much cut and dried. So when you have to sell something, or I guess sell something that you weren't intending to sell, it's not really a good feeling, I guess. So, and then when you, like Larry said, when you have to pay tax on that, what you were forced to sell, that even kind of it's a wound that you have that feels like you're getting salt rubbed into it. Just adds on to the irritation or the discomfort what comes with it all. And then if you have to pay taxes on that money, what you're getting, what you weren't intending to sell, you're basically kind of even possibly thrown into a higher tax bracket, which kind of makes it even worse there. So you might be paying more taxes than you were originally intending to from just your ordinary income. But, and with the eminent domain, when you don't have a choice where you want to go, your property values, the property values might necessarily go down, but if you want to sell off a piece for housing or something, if someone wanted to build a house, and because it's like at our particular place where we have it, where it's going through, we've had offers to that they're really wanting to buy our property in this one location because it was real scenic. And well, now with the transmission line going through, it's going basically right over where that place is. So that kind of pretty well does away with having any kind of a opportunity to sell, I would think, because I don't think anybody's going to want to be building a nice house that's got a huge transmission line, and it's, I haven't seen it myself yet what it's going to look like, but the pictures of it and what they say it's going to look like, it's huge. It's got big towers that I think they rise up in the air about 200 some feet, I think, and they're on like a 40 by 40 concrete pad. So I kind of give you maybe an indication of how big the towers will be. And then you got a huge transmission lines that go through. It's going to take away from the scenery. If you thought you had a beautiful view of your property, it's kind of it's not going to be there anymore. You're going to have look over the bluffs and stuff, and all you're going to see, or the first thing you're going to see, is that transmission line. So I mean, it just kind of it's hard to take. And then not only with that, then you trying to farm where I farm, and the property that it's on, it's going to even make it more difficult to have to try and maneuver around some of those obstacles too. So, but at any rate, it's like I say, being taxed on the money you're forced to sell. It just there's just something about it just doesn't seem right. That's pretty much all I have to say. I thank you for your time, and if there is any questions that I can answer, I'll do my best to answer them.
Thank you. Committee, any questions? Could you give the committee just a little bit of an idea of the scope of the eminent domain? Do they just take the acreage that's under each proposed tower, or is there a strip that goes through your property, or what does that look like?
Well, it's a strip. Just depends on how big of it. We've got pipelines that have gone through, and they've got like a 40-foot right of way, about 20 feet on each side, and then the transmission line I think is similar to that, probably about 20 feet on each side, and it runs all the way through the property. It's not just where the towers are. They got the right of way of the whole span of what they're going on, and I think they had calculated what ours is. It's around 20 some acres. What's going to entail that they're going to have access over. So,
and is this primarily farmland? Is it grazing land, or what's
it's
predominant?
both farmland and grazing. We got cattle, and some of the ground that they're going over is only good for cattle on some of it, and then but there is both cattle or grazing and cropland.
So is the property that's in the right of way, is that taking out of production? Do you have to build fences to keep the livestock out, or?
No, that it won't, but the areas where your pad is, like I say, it's about if my memory serves me right, it's like a 40 by 40 or so. So I mean, you'll have that amount of area it's going to be concrete, so that won't produce anything. But and then where if you have to farm around it, it's unless you trip out all the time and make short rows and turn rows and everything else, you're going to be kind of running over probably more stuff by the time you turn around and try and get every little bit. So you almost probably have a little bit of ground that doesn't get crop probably, but I mean, just if you figure a square, and if you want to try to put your rows farming around it, you'll have kind of like a little triangle on each side, if it, however, depending on however it fits into your farming rotate or uh, cropping rotation, whatever your what I'm saying, the way you're planting, the direction and stuff. So.
Well, I'm a farmer and rancher in western Kansas. There's nothing to run into out there, so
There's plenty to run into at our place. You got trees and ditches and everything else, and terraces. We've got a lot of terraces, and there if we farm down the bottom, it's flat, so you can fall asleep in the tractor on the bottom, but in the hills you don't think about that.
I also had a question for Representative Howerton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So are there roads? Do they have access with vehicles if they have the eminent domain?
They don't necessarily have roads that go. They'll take the public roads wherever it comes off of, and then when their property starts, and they can, if they need to get to it, they'll just drive through their right of way, whatever it is. It wouldn't be a road. It'd probably be either your field or something like that. They would have to go through and possibly damage your crops or whatever, which I'm assuming, and I think they have it in there where the pipeline does anyway. When they do it, they pay damages if they ruin any crops or anything. They'll pay for what damages they've caused.
Representative Helgerson.
When they take your land, they take a swath from one end to the other.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Do you have access from one side to the other through their land?
Yes, we still have. They can't keep us off of the land, so we got access to it also.
So you can drive through their land that they technically own onto one parcel to another parcel.
Yes, I guess depending on what you're driving now, if you have heavy equipment, like we own a dozer and excavator, now with the transmission line, I'm not sure how that'll be. It'll probably be high enough in the air, probably won't cause a problem, but being a dozer and a excavator have a lot of weight, they don't want you driving across the pipeline because the weight and probably the vibration, they say could possibly have negative effects on the pipeline. So on some things, I guess there are things where they don't want you going from point A to point B to cross their line or whatever. But
one other question, if I might. You brought up an interesting point, and that was you lost some land that they took from you. But I would value that if I had one uninterrupted parcel with not only agricultural profitable land, but also natural beauty, which is a separate category, that there are different compensations for those. How were you compensated, and was it fair?
Well, for the scenery part and everything, we
No.
weren't compensated for that. No, it was just strictly for whatever the value of the. I guess basically what they took is whatever the value of your property was at. Say if you sold some farmland or something, and you got however many, it's $3,000 or $4,000 an acre or whatever. That's what they went by, is whatever the value of the.
That's what they stuck it to you.
What's that?
That's what they stuck to you.
Yes. So of course now, I mean, they gave you what was the higher rate of what the land was. Of course, that was back several years ago. Land's appreciated and it's gone up quite a bit more from what it was. So, but
of course, they took the choice part because they took it right from the center as opposed to the edge.
Well, that's true. They say they have to follow a certain route. I mean, they can't just go. That's what they say anyway. And I'm not so sure. I thought they said they are supposed to follow the same corridor that like the pipelines went through. Only they're off of the, they're further away. They're not right beside like where the pipeline right of ways are. They're a little ways further, but it's still the same type of corridor that how the pipelines are going, say east and west in that certain place. They have to, kind of stay the same vicinity.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Committee, any further questions?
I would like to make another comment if possible after John talks.
Yes, sir. I'll allow that if you can make it brief. We do have some other business, but thank you for your testimony, John. Appreciate it. Committee, that concludes our proponent section testimony. Is there anyone I missed? Okay. If not, Larry, if you want to come up and address the committee right quick.
Everybody's situation is different. I don't know. I think John said it was going to be like 40 foot on both sides. Down there where I am, and they're going across the Missouri River, it comes from 150 foot to 300 foot. And they're taking 13.5 acres. Mine's all trees. They say that's not worth as much, but it's in the CRP, and I grow trees for wildlife and stuff, and they make air for us to breathe too. But everybody's situation is different. They're not taking near as wide through his fields. When they go down over his bluff, I'm sure they're going to go wider because they're not letting no trees close to this line. So that's all I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Do not show any written, or excuse me, we do have written testimony as a proponent from the Kansas Realtors Association. I'm not showing any neutral or opponent testimony. So at this time, we will close the hearing on House Bill 2610. And I would ask the committee to draw your attention to our next item of business, which is a hearing on House Bill 2662. And I'll turn to Amelia again for an overview.
Good afternoon again, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. House Bill number 2662 would provide a sales tax exemption for all sales of tangible personal property or services purchased by a contractor for the purpose of constructing, equipping, reconstructing, maintaining, repairing, enlarging, furnishing, or remodeling a building that is operated by or intended to be operated by the Kansas Fairgrounds Foundation. And such is located on the grounds of the Kansas State Fair. And the Kansas Fairgrounds Foundation is a 501c3 nonprofit organization. In addition, the State Fairgrounds Foundation would be eligible to apply for a refund for sales tax that would have been exempted under this provision had the sale occurred, I believe, on and after May 19th of 2023 until the effective date of the bill, which I believe this is drafted as from and after the publication in the statute book, which would be July 1st of 2024. And I'd be happy to stand for questions.
I'll throw you a curveball here, and I'm not sure if you're
Okay.
up to speed on this, but I'm just curious, and perhaps some of the proponents could answer this question, but this is on the state fairgrounds. Who actually owns this building after it's built?
I think that would be a good question for one of the conferees, perhaps.
Okay, because this is a little bit different situation than we see these sales tax exemptions for projects before, but this one's a little bit different. So I just wanted to clarify that. But, committee, any questions for Amelia? Seeing none, thank you again. I'll also turn to the Department of Revenue now for an overview on the fiscal note.
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, Kathleen Smith with the Kansas Department of Revenue. We are estimating that House Bill 2662 would decrease state revenues by approximately $188,000 in fiscal year 2025. Of that total, state general fund would be estimated to decrease by $155,000, and the state highway fund to decrease by $33,000 in fiscal year 2025. And we got those numbers based upon a review provided by the Kansas State Fair Foundation.
Thank you. Committee, any questions for Kathleen? Seeing none, thank you as always. At this time, we'll open up the proponent section testimony and welcome first to committee Representative Mosier.
Chair Smith, Vice Chair Burkamp, Ranking Member Miller, and members of the committee. Good afternoon. I'm Lisa Mosier, and I'm here today to testify in support of House Bill 2662. What a rare occurrence that a nonprofit organization utilizes every dollar it raises for the betterment of an entity owned by the state of Kansas. The mission of the Kansas Fairgrounds Foundation is to preserve and improve the Kansas State Fairgrounds so that delightful memories and traditions are made by all who attend either the Kansas State Fair or any of the other myriad of activities that occur on the fairgrounds throughout the year. Work including renovation, new construction, preservation, and beautification projects continuously enhances the pristine and welcoming environment of the fairgrounds and has been the foundation's focus since its inception in 2003. The biggest undertaking of the Kansas Fairgrounds Foundation drew closer to fruition in the spring of 2023 when plans were finalized to raise an older building at the corner of Cottonwood Avenue and Fort Riley Boulevard to allow for the construction of the 1861 Club, an intermediate-sized venue on that site. This $5 million project is being built totally by donated private donations. Upon its completion, the venue will become the property of the state of Kansas, with the Kansas Fairgrounds Foundation continuing to do the upkeep, the maintenance on it, and ensuring the building. I was contacted in August of 2023 by a foundation board member who, after the project had begun, was contacted by the contractor explaining that sales tax was being charged on the purchases for the project. At this point, the foundation realized there was not a sales tax exemption in place, though, as was mentioned earlier, the foundation is a 501c3 nonprofit. Research by Mr. Edward Penner from KLRD done in September 2023 indeed concluded that the necessary wording for a sales tax exemption was not found in the foundation statute. It was at this point that the decision was made to write legislation to create a sales tax exemption for the Kansas Fairgrounds Foundation to recoup sales tax paid since the beginning of the 1861 Club construction and to maintain that sales tax exemption for all future foundation projects. This request by the Kansas Fairgrounds Foundation falls into a most unique situation. The foundation focuses all its time, talent, and treasure into giving back to the state of Kansas through its focus on the Kansas State Fairgrounds and the Kansas State Fair. It is here that every participant in state fair activities and any individuals who utilize the state fairgrounds for other events held there throughout the year benefit from the work of the foundation. This is not a typical request for a sales tax exemption. Every dollar raised by the foundation is invested back into making the fairgrounds a better place for all, not only to experience the excellence of and gain understanding of Kansas agriculture, industry, and culture during the Kansas State Fair, but also through the other events held year-round. Thank you for the opportunity to testify in support of HB 2662. I ask that the committee pass the bill out favorably. I will stand for questions at the appropriate time.
Thank you, Representative. Committee, since we have several proponents, I think we'll take questions at the end of all the conferees. So thank you, Representative. Our next conferee is Representative Murphy.
Thank you, Chairman. Michael Murphy, 114th District. I want to thank you for the opportunity to offer proponent testimony for HB 2662. Typically, I'm not one to approve of carve-outs in taxes, as they tend to shift the burden to the rest of us. However, this is a really unique situation, and I believe it offers more benefit to the state and the community than cost in state revenue. As you're aware, the foundation is a nonprofit organization whose entire mission is to improve and enhance the state fair and the facility that benefits our area for the entire year, not just for the 10 days of the state fair. The project will donate a fantastic facility and venue to the state fair that will be a source of revenue and benefit for decades to come. The ask in this bill is very unique, and the situation is very unique. I request, if this is considered in committee, that you would pass 2662 favorably. I thank you for this opportunity, and I'll stand for questions when it's appropriate.
Thank you, Representative. Our next conferee would be Mary McCurry. Welcome to committee.
Thank you, Chairman Smith and the committees. And a pleasure to be here on behalf of the Kansas Fairgrounds Foundation. I'm Mary McCurry from Hutchinson area, and I am chair currently of the Kansas Fairgrounds Foundation. My part will be brief, but I do want to give you a glimpse into the history and why this organization indeed exists. Mary Alice Lair, a long-term Kansas State Fair Board member from Chanute, Kansas, developed the idea to charter the Kansas Fairgrounds Foundation after visiting several state fairs across the country and seeing the benefit of a philanthropic avenue to improve the money flow for state fairs. It was overwhelmingly evident when she was visiting fairs that those with a philanthropic fund advantage coupled with limited public funds came together and provided significant improvements for those fairgrounds. And they were definitely different than those that were functioning without foundations. So in 2003, Mary Alice Lair gathered together a group of people from across the whole state of Kansas who had a love for the Kansas State Fair and created the Kansas Fairgrounds Foundation. So officially, the Kansas Fairgrounds Foundation was incorporated as a nonprofit in Kansas on August the 27th of 2003, and then received its IRS designation as a 501c3 organization April 28, 2004. In 2021, while serving on the board, we undertook the change of bylaws and incorporated the 3 officers of the Kansas State Fair and a committee member from the Grand Drive Committee that is run by the Kansas State Fair as voting directors on our board. To date, more than 40 people across Kansas have served as directors of the Kansas Fairgrounds Foundation. Foundation building and improvement projects started the year that the Kansas Fairgrounds Foundation was formed, and our first project was the well-known interactive water fountain, better known as the Splash Pad. If you've attended the fair, it is probably one of the most noted attractions. It is a gathering place for people, and of course the children love it, but I do think that the adults watching the children do get as much of benefit out of it as that. So that was project number 1. From 2005 to 2012, the foundation, which is comprised entirely of volunteers, all of us working, all of us having jobs, focused primarily on small improvement projects that we could raise money for on the fairgrounds. Some of those included livestock panels, lighting improvements on the fairgrounds, as well as new sidewalks. So that was kind of our initial phase. In 2013, the foundation took on the challenge to build what is now referred to as the Lair White House, which is a 2-story structure that resembles a home. This building was dedicated 1 year later in 2014 with the first floor home of the Kansas State Fair Museum, and the second floor currently serves as a hospitality reception area for major sponsors and also hosting a lot of our judges and other folks who are needing a gathering place. Currently, the second floor is still being used as a reception hosting place, but it's also the office for the Kansas Fairgrounds Foundation. If you've attended the Kansas State Fair Legislative Luncheon in recent years, it's held in a tent on the backyard of the Lair White House. From 2015 to 2022, the foundation again focused primarily on many small-scale projects, including if you've ever gone to the Prairie Pavilion, all those fans that are hanging from the ceiling, birthing center panels, and also the information center signage, which is in the middle of the fairgrounds. In 2020, when the Kansas State Fair was canceled due to COVID restrictions, the foundation provided an avenue of financial support for the fair. From 2021 to 2023, the last 2 years, while still doing a few smaller projects, the foundation partnered with the Kansas Cooperative Council from Kansas and across the region to do the Capper project. This project included a complete rebuild of the House of Capper and the establishment of the Capper Cooperative Project House. Senator Capper and also former Kansas Governor Capper was essential in creating the Capper-Volstead Act of 1922, which provided for the establishment of co-ops in the United States of America. At the same time, when he was governor, he gave his own private funds to build the House of Capper, which stands on the fairgrounds, and prior to its rebuild was the second oldest structure on the fairgrounds. The Capper project brought this House of Capper back to its brilliance, and it really does serve as a centerpiece to the Kansas State Fair now. The Capper Cooperative Park, and I hope all of you have a chance to view that when you come to the Kansas State Fair or whenever you're attending one of the 650 non-fair events that are held on the fairgrounds yearly, that you will take a chance to walk through the only walk-through educational park in the United States that tells the story of cooperatives. And each of us, I have a farm background and we ranch, we raise cattle. Even as a child growing up in Tennessee, and co-ops were a vital part of our family operation. I don't think you realize that you're touched daily by not only grain farmer co-ops, but electric co-ops, credit unions. You just name the organizations that have benefited from the forward-thinking Senator Capper. And so we want his story to continue to be told. This $1.2 million project on the Kansas State Fairgrounds was coordinated and funded wholly through the foundation with charitable contributions, primarily from cooperatives and individuals from throughout Kansas and the region of the United States of America, because we want to educate the public on why co-ops exist and how they benefit each of us in our daily lives. Thank you. And I think the rest of the presenters will tell the rest of the story.
All right, thank you, Mary.
Thank
you already
you.
answered one of the questions I had, which was what's the main difference of the foundation and the State Fair Board? So
Yes.
you did an excellent job
Thank
providing
you.
the history.
State Fair Board is a politically appointed board that serves at different regions, and we are entirely volunteers. We've finally got some staff, so we're drinking from a water hose right now. Thank you.
That's an expression we use down here frequently. So yes, our next conferee would be John Fisher. Welcome to committee, sir.
Thank you, Chairman Smith. My name is actually James Fisher, and I'm the Executive Director for the Kansas Fairgrounds Foundation. I appreciate the time here to speak in support of House Bill 2622. In 2022, the Kansas Fairgrounds Foundation began discussions about how to create sources of revenue to support the operations of the foundation. The objective of this was to provide a base source of revenue for the foundation so that all of the charitable funds generated through other projects could go directly into improvements for the Kansas State Fairgrounds and to support programming of the Kansas State Fair. This discussion created a commitment from a small group of individuals to donate the charitable funds needed to the foundation to build a new events venue on the Kansas State Fairgrounds. This venue would be operated and managed by the foundation, and during the fair, it would serve as a food, beverage, and entertainment venue, and then in non-fair times, it will be used and made available for rent for corporate events, private parties, weddings, generating a base of revenue and income for the foundation, therefore making other funds available to do improvements on the fairgrounds. This new event venue, which is currently being constructed, has been named the 1861 Club in recognition of the year Kansas became a state. It is a venue that all Kansas and their guests are welcome to visit during the Kansas State Fair. It is essential to understand that any project undertaken by the foundation to improve the fairgrounds must first be approved by the Kansas State Fair Board. Again, the Kansas State Fair Board approves any and all projects that the foundation takes on. As we discussed the 1861 Club project specifically, it's also important to realize that once it is completed, to answer Adam's question, this project, like all foundation projects, become the property of the Kansas State Fair, in essence, the state of Kansas. What is the 1861 Club? It is a venue unlike any in the region and very needed in the community. With a tagline, "A space as grand as your dreams," it will be a beautiful venue for weddings and corporate events. The 1861 Club will feature a 30-foot tall, peaked tongue groove wood ceiling, heavy timber laminate structure, stone accents inside and out with large windows for natural lighting. We invite you at your first opportunity to check out the website at 1861club.com. Work on the 1861 Club began in early 2022 with discussion by the Foundation Board and then presentations on the proposed project to the Kansas State Fair Board at several of their meetings throughout 2022. The project would take an old dilapidated maintenance storage building in the heart of the fairgrounds and turn it into a location that would be an income generating revenue source. Furthermore, it would be built with private funds to benefit the State Fair, as has already been mentioned. The State Fair Board approved the foundation's request to proceed forward with this project. A joint committee comprised of Kansas Fairgrounds Foundation board members and State Fair board members were asked to review the project plans as developed. In early 2023, the foundation moved forward with developing the project's drawings, plans, and the timeline for completion, which is set for August 15th, 2024. The venue will be open for the 2024 Kansas State Fair. Pre-construction work that needed to be done on the fairgrounds was identified. This included the installation of new electric transformers to service the area on the fairgrounds, as well as moving and elimination of some overhead power lines and changes in other utilities. The first building expense that the foundation had outside of the initial payment to the general contractor was the electric transformer purchased in May of 2023. The old structure was demolished in July of 2023 with dirt work that followed, and then the project went dormant the last week of August through the 2 weeks of the fair, with the next stage of construction starting immediately after the fair. At this point, orders for all of the project's major components have been placed by either the general contractor or one of the subcontractors. The project is currently on schedule for completion by that August 15th date. I thank you, and I will turn it over to the next speaker.
Thank you. I'd like to welcome next to committee, Mr. Brad Real.
I had, and thank you, Chairman, I appreciate it. I'm the one to blame for this bill probably, and I apologize to Representative Mosier. What I thought was a pretty simple thing and maybe was totally logical has turned into something a little bit different. 1995, I was asked to be on the Kansas State Fair Board, and I was appointed on that board and served for 21 years. Through Governors Graves, Sebelius, Parkinson for a time since Sebelius went and left, and then under Brownback, his 2 terms. Got off of that, Mary Alice Lair, who has been mentioned earlier, we got on the Kansas State Fair Board in 1995 together. In that time, as you know, if you go back into history, Kansas State Fair was in really pretty bad shape. And so we lobbied. We came to the legislature. It was a bipartisan bill, and it went through, and it was to fund to redo the Kansas State Fairgrounds as we know it today. I was chairman of that master plan and literally walked that project for the next 5 or 6 years to fruition. Got off of that, promptly got on the foundation board because Mary Alice goes, okay, you're not done yet. You need to be on this board. We have changed a lot because our promise to the legislature back in about 1997, 1998 was we formed a fund that the city of Hutchinson, Reno County, state of Kansas, and private money could be put into a pot to pay for the bonds to pay that $21 million renovation, and that was done. We, at that time, the foundation, quite frankly, was like a lot of ideas. Really, there wasn't the horsepower behind it. It did a good job, but it was smaller and smaller projects. The biggest project or the biggest fundraiser was an event called Boots and Bling. And for any of you that have not been there, it's something to at least attend one time because it's a very unique event. Major fundraiser. I'm sitting in a board room, a little bit frustrated by our revenue source because the only way we're going to be able to sustain the Kansas State Fair, other than to come up here and beg for taxpayer money all the time, is to raise it ourselves. But so we hired an executive director. The gentleman is exceedingly great at his job. We have some volunteers that literally give their time and efforts and money freely. We're in a board meeting and I'm frustrated, and you most don't. I think Representative Helgerson probably knows me, and the rest I don't know that I know, but not exactly the most patient person in the world. So I'm going, we've got to have a revenue source constantly other than trying to write grants and things like every other foundation does. So I said, let's build a venue during the fair that we can, to serve beverage and food and whatever. And so the gentleman behind me, who is a very good friend of mine, he goes, how much is this going to cost? And I said, I don't know. It's going to be $600,000-$700,000 probably. He goes, don't worry about it. I'll just pay for it. So he and I got together and started dreaming about what we wanted in the now called the 1861 Club. Well, it went from 600,000 to 6 million. We got the original bid back, and I'm like, I knew it was going to be expensive, but not this bad. So I called my friend and I said, okay, we're just going to have to downsize this because literally, and he goes, Brad, you and I have never done anything halfway. My family, it wants to give back to the state of Kansas and to Reno County. So I'm going to go ahead and pay for it. So I said, are you sure? I said, don't let me back you in a corner as I've done several times in our life. Don't do that. And he goes, no, that's what I want to do. So we got the general contractor, got everything done, signed the contract. I'm at home doing something else, and I get a call, and he goes, Brad, I got bad news. And I said, what's that? And he said, you can't qualify for project exemption for sales tax. And I'm going, well, what? He goes, yeah, it's going to be about $400,000 extra on the project. And I'm going, now this doesn't make sense. We're private money going into a state facility because when the last nail is driven, it's going to be the state of Kansas. We've already agreed that we'll provide insurance, maintenance, so that it doesn't cost taxpayers a dime. And by the way, any revenue generated goes back to the state of Kansas. So this doesn't make a lot of sense to me. So I called Representative Mosier. She goes, that doesn't really make sense. She goes, this shouldn't be a real problem. So that's where we are. In my mind, I don't like project exemptions and passing a sales tax. That's my taxpayer money. And so if I'm in your shoes and something else come up here, I get the hesitancy. But where it's honestly all of our building, we're kind of collected. So logically, to me, we ought to be able to get the state sales tax portion back. We're not going to be able to go to all the places that this was bought. At the time, I thought, well, maybe we'll just run this through the Kansas Fairgrounds Foundation. We'll just pay for all the materials, which would, if it's for our use, we have that exemption. Well, when you have this glue lamb structure from, I don't remember where it's from, they're not going to sell to us. So, and it's just not possible to do. Originally, I had asked to go back to Capper Building because that was about $30,000 in sales tax. But by the counsel of Representative Moore, she goes, Brad, this is already confusing enough. You can't go back that far. Let's just try this project and maybe the ones forward. So again, appreciate your time. If there's any questions, would stand for those. What I think is a clear and logical choice. Everybody is different. But anyway, I appreciate your time. And Representative Murphy and Representative Mosier, I am sorry I got you in this mess. Anyway, thank you very much.
Brad, thank you. And thank you for your years of dedication to the State Fair and the Fairgrounds Foundation. At this time, we'll go ahead and open it up for questions, starting off with Representative Helgerson.
Yeah, first of all, Brad, I want to thank you for all your work and everyone else for all the work and dedication you've had over the years. There was a little bit of confusion in what I heard. This is more than just one building. This is permanent for all building for the past, but also anything in the future that you decide to build.
This bill,
You might get your microphone back. There you go.
there we go. 26 is only for the 1861 club. We're not going to go back any further than that. And for any projects that the foundation does in the future.
The future.
Right. And what do we have planned for the future? Well, we do have Mrs. McCurry had talked about there's a building there right by the pool. That's probably going to be our next project as a foundation. It's called the Fountain House. Remember also that right now, I think the legislature had given the Kansas State Fair a lot of money for the bison. Okay, we are also helping and soliciting private funds for that through several other sponsors to do the other side of that. So those projects we're not talking about because that is not a foundation project. Okay, that would be a state of Kansas project or the state fair. We're just talking about those projects at the Kansas Fairgrounds Foundation, which is a 501c, if for any capital that we might go forward.
Okay, thank you. One follow-up for Kathleen. Do you have to identify these projects ahead of time before they start and issue a certificate? Okay. Thank you.
Let the record show Kathleen nodded affirmative for anyone watching online today. Committee, any further questions for the proponents? Representative Bergkamp.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess, Brad, if you don't mind coming up one more time. I assume that the fairgrounds, they're probably property tax exempt. Is that correct?
For the state
fairgrounds?
No.
Or do you guys pay property taxes?
No, because we own no buildings. The state of Kansas does.
Okay.
And that's kind of an interesting concept because on the Capper building, for example, we did not raise enough money to complete that. Again, that project that went over budget. So what we did, several of us went and got a loan, okay, personally. Well, there's no collateral because the Capper building, as soon as the last nail's driven, becomes state property. So there is, it's state of Kansas property. So there's no ownership by the foundation of any buildings. It's state of Kansas.
And then last question. So if in the future, if you wanted to redo like the grandstands, would that be potential for the exemption as well?
I doubt it. And again, I don't want to, that would probably be a state fair board project. I'm not saying we wouldn't get involved to help raise money for it, but it wouldn't be a project that we did solely by ourselves. But so no, I doubt if the grandstand would be a foundation project.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any further questions, committee? Representative Corbett.
Chairman, do we have a bill that encompass all these 50 whatever's coming through?
We do have a bill that's probably going to be scheduled next week for a hearing. However, that is for all 501c3s, but it's not projects. It's just on the purchases that they make. So it's fairly limited, even though it encompasses all the 501cs, we would still need this bill for this specific project. Seeing no further questions, thank you again for your testimony. Thank you to all the proponents. We did have some written, let me get back to my agenda. We had some written proponent testimony. Is there anyone wishing to appear on behalf of House Bill 2662 as an opponent or neutral? Seeing none, we will close the hearing on House Bill 2662. And unless there's any announcements, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.